Of the vast assortment of weapons that you can find in Fallout 4, only some of them are legendary. And I wanted to propose the question, could you beat Fallout 4 with only legendary weapons? After becoming God for a few seconds, I hideously deformed a man, making him unrecognisable to even his own mother. Because all weapon types can be used, no specific special point really matters. I maxed out intelligence to level up faster, drained charisma, and more or less evenly spread everything else. I named myself Legend Barry, and the real game was about to begin. But what qualifies as a legendary weapon? Throughout Fallout 4, there are certain weapons that have very special effects, like the Righteous Authority laser rifle that does double damage on critical shots and refills your critical meter even faster. With that out of the way, I decided I needed to make a quick run to the shop. Fell into the section where they keep the frozen peas, set the game difficulty to very hard for a higher chance of finding legendary weapons, and allowed the frozen fish fillets to take care of my body for the next 200 years. Now here's the crux of this challenge. I can't attack anything until I find a legendary weapon. So whilst I'm leaving Vault 111, I can't kill any of the radroaches. So I do my best to squeeze past them all without dying or hurting any of them. I made it all the way to the end without killing any of them, but it wouldn't let me take the Pip-Boy, so I had to lead the radroaches back through the vault, shut them behind a door, and go and pick it up. And once that was done and dusted, I escaped Vault 111 without killing a single radroach. It was then time to start scrapping absolutely every possible thing that I could find in Sanctuary Hills. And after that was done, I built 457 wire fences by standing motionless and spamming the X button over and over and over again. This will give me a nice little boost of XP to give me a few extra levels before I go out into the wild, wicked wasteland. After reaching level 4, I took the Toughness perk, Life Giver, and put an extra point into Charisma so I could creep a little closer to getting the Lone Wanderer perk, as I'm going to be by myself for the vast majority of this adventure. Before leaving Sanctuary, I found a little bit more steel, so I built a couple more wire fences and leveled up again, and put the final point into Charisma to ensure that next time I leveled up, I'd get the Lone Wanderer perk. So the idea was to go straight to Cambridge Police Station and then go to ArcJet with Dance to be able to get the Righteous Authority. So I marked it on the map, sent Dogmeat back to the world of fences, completely strolled past Concord and ignored Preston, and down the road I met Trashcan Carla. Sold absolutely everything that the gods said I aren't allowed to use, including my ammo. Trust me, that came back to bite me on the ass later. Bought myself some armour to protect my pudgy little body against the bullets that are going to be flying at me later. Equipped the Fallout equivalent of a Buzz Lightyear cosplay and was ready to go. Hid behind a hill while Wolfgang killed Trudy. Then sold even more stuff to Wolfgang for a couple more caps. Quickly checked the stats page just to double check I hadn't killed anything. Discovered Corvega assembly plant just to potentially save me a little bit of time later on, and at long last arrived at Cambridge Police Station, but not having a single legendary weapon, I was unable to attack anything. So I ran around hiding from everything whilst Dan's cleaned up the mini horde of ghouls that were just charging the police station for some reason. And then whilst I was watching the superior Buzz Lightyear cosplayer clear out the ghouls, I got distracted by a helicopter piece of meat before a ghoul scratched off my left arse cheek. But I wasn't going to let my lack of an arse stop me from viewing such a magnificent display, so I did a sneak so I could watch the show a little more. After talking to Dance, completing the fire support quest, I leveled up and finally could take the Lone Wanderer perk. And at long last, almost an hour into the playthrough, we was away to ArcJet with Paladin Dance. Whilst in ArcJet, I just basically stood motionless whilst Dance dealt with all the synths, whilst also taking the fusion cells off certain synths so I could have more ammunition when I finally got Righteous Authority. Had a brief moment where I thought the junk jet classed as a legendary weapon, but it doesn't, but it did give me an idea for another video. Made an unsuccessful attempt to cook Paladin Dance so I could have a snack. I ignored Dance's pain whilst I took more fusion cells, told his bitch ass to get up and get in the lift. He used his godlike power to manifest in front of me, and we reached the final room of synths. Dance did the work, obviously, but I found the thing that we came here for, so I could steal all the credit from his peers. And at long last, my bloodlust will be able to be satiated because I got my hands on my first legendary weapon, that being Righteous Authority. I tested out my new laser boomstick on the super mutants outside of Diamond City, took the science perk from the level up that gave me, told Mayor McDonough that he is full of shit, and sold all of my ammo that wasn't a fusion cell to Percy so I could buy even more fusion cells. Told Ellie that I'd go and find Nick for her, did the interview with Pipette for a little bit more experience, took the stimp pack upgrade, and then headed back to Sanctuary to upgrade my gun. I gave it a sight, a beam focuser, and burning damage, because apparently getting shot with a laser doesn't burn enough. I then remembered of another legendary weapon that, if you guys don't like this, may fail the challenge because it's Creation Club. If so, feel free to dislike the video and scream at me at the top of your lungs in the comments. But there is a legendary Skyrim sword and helmet that can be found through one of the Creation Club quests. Whilst clearing Hubris Comics of ghouls, I found a legendary ghoul stalker. Knocked him down a hole, and he had a poisonous double-barrel shotgun just for me. But, like I said earlier, because I'd sold all of my ammo, I wasn't able to use it just yet. Tried to sneak past one of the raiders, only for him to fall off the roof anyway. And finally got my hands on the Furious Steel Sword. Now this bad boy does increased damage on each consecutive hit that you land on the same enemy. And the only reason that I got it was to cover my own ass. If I run out of ammo, I have something that I am able to defend myself with. I then made a quick pit stop in Diamond City to buy some shotgun shells from Arturo. I then went to clear out the Museum of Freedom for a little bit more XP, dealt with the Deathclaw, put a sight on my shotgun to make blowing people's heads off easier, and then tried to upgrade my sword, but realised very quickly that I was in no way intelligent enough to do such a thing. And after talking myself out of ingesting cyanide in vast quantities due to my ridiculously low intelligence, it was time to get on with the story and go and save Nick Valentine. Now, initially, the triggermen weren't too much of a problem if I used cover fire, but a problem soon arose when I started running low on ammo about halfway through the vault. And after attempting to sword fight many men with submachine guns that are ready to add even more holes to my already holy man body, I got my shit pushed in and I ran away crying. And after wiping the snot from my adult face, I went back to Diamond City, bought some ammo off Arturo and Myrna, and then I went back to the vault ready to kick some triggerman ass. And suffice to say, that went a hell of a lot better. So we saved Nick, killed Skinny Malone and his gang, and then that progressed the story just a tiny little bit further. I then did some buying and selling, told Nick it was Kellogg that stole my son, and then it was time to try and get into his house. Now, due to my abysmally low charisma level, the mayor wasn't going to have any of my shit, and neither was Geneva. But I could bribe her, but she wanted 250 caps, and I didn't have that, so I had to go and find some money. And for some reason, Past Me figured somehow the easiest way to do that was to do the quest for Halen. I don't know why. I guess Past Me thought a simple go and get something quest wasn't going to have anything shooting at me. Oh, and also, why Halen's quest over Reese, you may ask? Well, simply put, Reese is a dick. Halen's quest isn't too complicated. Just shoot this raider and that raider, get the thing and go back to her, and you get money. It's fairly simple stuff. I mean, doing this quest wasn't a total waste, since I got a level up and I chose the Action Boy perk, so my action points had refilled 25% faster. And when I gave the device back to Halen, I got a measly 97 caps. But it got me over the threshold, so her brains will remain in her skull for today. I then sold some unnecessary shit to Percy, just to make sure I wasn't left completely broke by bribing Geneva. I then woke Geneva's lazy ass up to give her the money, looted the fuck out of Kellogg's house, and then it was time for the most exciting part of Fallout 4, going to Fort Hagen. Nothing exciting really happened on the way to Fort Hagen, apart from trying to fight a bear with a sword and losing. Oh yeah, and I found a wounding submachine gun, which makes targets bleed for 25 points of extra damage every shot. So, you know, added a little bit more weaponry to my arsenal, so I wasn't really going to complain there. The synths in Fort Hagen weren't too much of a problem, but I did get a level up, and I figured, now I've got my submachine gun, the wisest choice would be to take the commando perk, so it's even stronger. Kellogg proved to be a little difficult, managing to kill me a couple of times, but I eventually managed to vaporise him and turn him into mush. I also added his pistol to my arsenal, which refills your action points on a critical hit. It's also pretty decent as a pistol, to be perfectly honest, so I wasn't going to complain at that either. I then did a little bit more buying and selling in Diamond City, spoke to Nick and Piper, and then was on my way to probably the most boring part of Fallout 4, the Memory Den. I then sped through Kellogg's memories as quickly as I possibly could, but when it got to the last one, obviously you can't skip it, so I went off to get food and it ended up looping twice. I then took a flight up to the Pridwin, attended a debriefing, attempted to skip through the debriefing, and spoke to the sexiest man you have ever seen. It then dawned on me that my armour was absolutely abysmal, so I went straight to Proctor Tegan and treated myself to a bit of stronger armour. And upon returning to Sanctuary with all the goodies that I'd found whilst out on my adventures, I did a little bit of upgrading, and then, for some reason, I decided to do some Minutemen quests. Now, some of you are going to sulk at me for this, but I changed the difficulty down to very easy. Now, before you start screaming and bawling, the point of the challenge is not to see if you can beat it on the hardest difficulty, but if you can beat it with that weapon, full stop. And I'm telling you, the difference was night and day, because on very hard, the enemies are a hell of a bullet sponge, but on very easy, I was pretty much one-shotting the raiders in the assembly plant, and it was just, it just made the run a lot more fun and a hell of a lot less stressful for me. I then realised that doing Minutemen quests was not going to progress the story whatsoever, so I decided to return to the Pridwin and go speak to the sexiest man who's ever lived. He sent me to go and take over Fort Strong. Now, I boarded the vertibird that he told me to get on and immediately realised that's going to be a problem, because there's a minigun aboard the vertibird and it will not land until you've used said minigun to kill all of the super mutants outside of Fort Strong. And after failing to fast travel out of the vertibird, I thought the only option that I've got is to reload the save and do it all over again. I then spoke to the gorgeous specimen once again, and instead of getting on the vertibird, I fast travelled near Fort Strong and made it there on foot. And just outside, I found half a suit of power armour, and I thought, fuck it, we'll use it. So I got in it and headed into Fort Strong, ready to slaughter some super mutants. After the blood-curdling screams of the super mutants stopped, I ran into Paladin Dance, who was rather surprised at how much I enjoyed butchering innocents. But I don't think he was all too bothered by it. In fact, I think he liked it quite a bit. Regardless, we secured the nukes and I returned to the Pridwin to sell even more stuff for ammo, including the crippling bat that I got from Fort Strong because my sword was more than enough for me. Then I spoke to Maxon for a pat on the head for a job well done. Next up was the Glowing Sea. Nothing of note really happened on the way there, apart from when I was approaching Virgil's cave. Because of the way that I got there, I didn't have to worry about the Deathclaw outside, so I just shot it in the ass and ran away. You know the shtick by now, he gives you the plans, you go and get the Corsair, you get it decoded, blah 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 blah, you build the teleporter, but my game crashed on me, so I lost 45 minutes of footage, which included going to find the Corsair, killing the Corsair, getting the chip decoded, and starting the teleporter. So, you'll just have to believe me on this one, because there's not really much I can do. In all fairness though, it was just the same boring shit that most people have to go through when they play Fallout 4, so I won't bore you with it. Nothing really exciting happened anyway, just the same usual stick. So, I started on building the teleporter. To help with building the teleporter, I just quickly jumped over to Sanctuary and grabbed as much junk as I could physically carry, just to make it a little bit easier when I was building everything. Now, I always seem to forget that when you create your character, when you eventually get to the Institute, Father is going to look like your character for obvious reasons. But when that walked through the door, I ain't gonna lie, I was a little bit disappointed. Now, usually when you kill Father, the entire Institute army comes down on you. But, for some reason, killing him made Fallout 4 shit itself and die, because the synths were there, but nobody was firing at me, they just stood there. So, and I was a little bit concerned, and this was really the start of some weird shit going down. Now, I got sent out to find Professor Scara, and whilst I was out doing that, I come across some synths that seemed to shoot me with some sort of teleportation ray that shot me halfway across the Commonwealth. Now, in my panic, I stopped the recording, but then when I reloaded it, it then had me inside of a building somewhere on the other side of the world. And then when I fast travelled back, there was just a car that was just so unbelievably excited to see me, it dived at me, and I just didn't know what to do. But I didn't let that discourage me, so I found Scara, sent her back to the airport to start work on Liberty Prime, then I had to go to Sentinel site and find the bombs. And after initially getting my poo pushed in by Atom's Wrath, I did just that. But then I got lost and wandered aimlessly around Sentinel site for a good 15 minutes before I realised there was a lift. Upon returning to the Pridwin, I was given a task that, wasn't so nice, because it turns out that Paladin Danse is a synth, and we don't like synths here in the Brotherhood, so I was sent out to go and pop his head off. And pop off his pretty little head I did, because after leading him into a false sense of security, I popped his head off so perfect that I'd have to make it black and white, or YouTube will start chowing at me. I then donned his power armour, ready to make the final preparations to go and destroy the Institute. But before we could do that, I had to go and deal with the railroad. Now, the only time I'd been to see him was when I got the Corsa chip decoded, which you didn't get to see because of the corrupted footage. But most of them went down fairly easy. I don't think any of them were a problem really, given that I was on very easy and only using legendary weapons. It was a cakewalk, really. Impressing the Brotherhood once again at just how good I am at killing things, they sent me off to mass fusion with Proctor Ingram. Nothing much exciting really, the synths didn't really stand a chance, and neither did the Sentry Bot and Assaultrons really, because just apparently you can make robots bleed with this type of machine gun. Finally, the time had come to follow Liberty Prime to the Institute to go and take them down. But fuck doing that, so I fast travelled to CIT Ruins, and did it that way, much quicker, much less stressful. It was inside the Institute when I really discovered just how powerful this submachine gun was, because even the legendary synths were just falling at my feet. And I'm not going to lie to you, I wasn't expecting to be greeted by Father's flying air-posing corpse, but that was also something that happened today. But I ignored that, pushed through, put the bomb on the reactor, got teleported out of there, and told my son to go and fuck himself. I then pushed the big red button, watched the Institute blow up into a huge cloud that would probably destroy the entire Commonwealth, I'm not gonna lie, and proved that you could beat Fallout 4 with only using legendary weapons. I mean, yeah, it was kind of obvious, wasn't it? Of course you can beat the game with legendary weapons, but I thought for my first Can You Beat, it'd be a nice and easy one. But if you're interested in any more Can You Beat challenges, feel free to subscribe and like the video. It means everything that you've made it this far alone. And thank you everybody for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.